The May national real estate numbers are in. Are they different than Florida's West Coast? Stay tuned. I have a lot to share. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Mike Renick. I am your host for this video. The national numbers I'm about to review and the comments and suggestions are coming from an organization called Keeping Current Matters. I have their permission to share the slides and the data. Going forward, what I'd like to do, well, let's talk about my favorite chart. Most agents know what's happening. The good agents have an understanding of what's happening, but the great agents can explain what's happening and, most importantly, develop a plan that's effective for you. It's not a one plan comes off the shelf and it works for everyone. Markets are different. The sub-markets are different. Whether you're working on the islands or on the mainland, condo versus a home, it is completely different. The great agents out there have access to that data, they understand it, and they develop a specific plan for you based on your needs. And that's how we operate here at Team Renick. On this video, I'd like to talk about national mortgage rates, home sales, and also price. So what is the latest on mortgage rates? We all understand they've been jumping all over the board. If we look at Nicole Blashow, senior economist at Zillow, the biggest thing when we're looking at mortgage rates right now is volatility. That's no surprise to anyone. When we look at this next chart, it goes back to October up through May. We see it's oscillating at 1 point over 8%, down as low as 6.6 at one point. Right now it's somewhere hovering around 7%. Where is it going to go? Let's see if we can find out. Let's look at the Deputy Chief Economist at First American, Odetta Kushi, and I quote, "Every month brings a new set of inflation and labor data that can influence the direction of mortgage rates. Ongoing inflation deceleration, a slowing economy, and even geopolitical uncertainty can contribute to lower mortgage rates. On the other hand, data that signals upside risk to inflation may result in higher rates." Look at NerdWallet. Their comment is, mortgage rates are influenced by many elements, including the inflation rate, the pace of job creation, and whether the economy is growing or shrinking. The Federal Reserve's monetary policy is a factor too, and is set by the Federal Open Market Committee. If you think about it, with the low unemployment rates that we have, in other words, more people are working than ever, that puts upward pressure on demand. Upward demand can put upward pressure on inflation and rising prices. So there's a mixed bag here. Let's look at Forbes, and I quote, "Mortgage rates are indirectly influenced by the Federal Reserve's monetary policy. When the central bank raises the federal funds target rate, as it did throughout 2022 and 2023, that has a knockoff effect by causing short-term interest rates to go up. The latest Fed decision back at the beginning of this month, the committee decided to maintain the target rate for the federal funds rate at 5.25% to 5.5%. There was no reduction in that rate. Let's look at the Federal Reserve. A comment, the committee's assessments will take into account a wide range of information, including readings on the labor market, conditions, the inflation pressures, and inflation expectations, and financial and internal developments." CNBC. The U.S. economy added fewer jobs than expected in April, while the unemployment rate rose, lifting hopes that the Fed, the Federal Reserve, will be able to cut interest rates in the coming months. Non-farm payrolls increased by 175,000 on the month, below the 240,000 estimated from the Dow Jones consensus. The unemployment rate ticked higher to 3.9 against expectations it would hold steady at 3.8. From a mortgage rate perspective, that may not be a negative thing. Daniel Hale, chief economist at Realtor.com. Today's cooler labor market data is a sign that mortgage rate relief could be on the horizon, but that will be dependent on inflation. We may see an unseasonably active summer and fall if inflation improves and mortgage rates drop. Inflation continues to exceed target rate. If we look at this chart going back to January 2020, the Federal Reserve has a target rate of 2%. We're seeing right now that we're hovering over 3%. So we're not down to where the Fed wants to be, so they're willing to reduce the rates at this point. Jerome Powell, chairman of the Fed, reducing policy constraint too soon or too much can result in a reversal of progress that we have seen in inflation and ultimately require even tighter policy to get inflation back to 2%. Jerome Powell, chairman of the Fed again. My personal forecast is that we will begin to see further progress on inflation this year. I don't know that it will be sufficient. I don't know that it won't. I think we're going to have to let the data lead us on that. It's really a wait and see game right now. Inflation is caused because demand and supply are out of kilter. They're not aligned. Right now, the demand for product in many sectors exceeds the supply. That's pushing prices up. One of the, in my mind, most inhuman way to solve that is you shrink the economy. People get laid off. I wish there was another way to do that. But that's the way the Fed takes this, is they're trying to shrink the economy, lower inflation, which ultimately will bring down the mortgage rates. If we look at the mortgage rate projections, the average of the three firms, Fannie Mae, MBA, and NAR, the average says in Q2 of 2024, we should see close to 7%, 6.83, but falling down in Q2 of 2025 down to 6.17. So the days of 2 and 3 and 4% mortgage rates appear to be behind us for quite some time. Let's take a look at home sales right now. When we look on the national scene, the average days on the market, if we look back in we look in 2021, we see that they were down very, very low. Florida was the same thing. But as we come into the current, when the data here through March of 2024 shows that the numbers have been rising all the way since May of last year, all the way up till now. There was a blip down in the last month, but it was up to as high as 38 days. When we take a look at Florida, which I shared in a video I did earlier today, we see a more steady state right now. The days on the market are up substantially from a year ago, 40%, but it's been relatively flat. And the days on the market aren't the 38, 36, 33 we talked about on the national. The days on the market right now are up to 70 days. A big factor of that is the supply is increasing heavily here on the west coast of Florida. Existing home sales, let's take a look at this chart on a national basis. We see, and this looks at it from year to year, from 2014 till now, we see the high back in the good days of 21 and 22. It was over 6.3, 6.4 million sales. Now, when we look at the data, it's down about 4.3 million sales. So home sales are down. When we go to the Florida, this is the west coast of Florida, and we look at solds. Solds is a dark green bar. And we're seeing that there's a trend upward right now. We haven't seen the significant shifts on the west coast of Florida. Many reasons for that. The predominant reason is the fact that we're drawing folks from all over the globe. Much of this area is a second home market. Those folks can come from anywhere in the globe. So we're seeing sales numbers starting to tick back up, still relatively strong. When we look by region again on the national scene, we see that overall, all four regions are reporting numbers are down. The South region, which is where Florida would be, is down 5%. We don't see that in Manatee and Sarasota County, but this is overall for the southern region. Pending home sales, we see right now in the South, it says it's down 1.5%. When we look on the west coast of Florida, pending is what I call the red squiggly line, and pendings are actually up from a year ago. So again, a little bit different data here in Manatee and Sarasota County versus what we see on a national basis, or we see in the South region when we look at the national numbers. This is more ammunition right here to prove my point. Your broker has to understand this data to do the best job for you. Let's look at prices. When we look by region, year over year, prices on the South are up 3.4%. Well, what I reported a couple of days ago, that in Florida, prices are up almost 9% from a year ago. So when we look at the local chart, we see a much more leveling than what we see on a national basis. So both on a national basis and both on the Florida West Coast, we see prices are up. When we put all this together, the reason I like to look at the national basis is that very well could be the future of what we face here. It's important to understand how the entire nation is going, but it's most important that we dig down into Sarasota, Manatee County. That's the area that my team services, but that's not the end all. We have to go further. We need to go into the town that you're looking at. We need to go into the homeowner association or the condo association and go down to that level. Because in just the two counties that we service, it's not uniform. The market on the islands is significantly different than the market on the inlands. Condos are different than single family homes. We study this data because it's important for us to have this background to do the best job for you. So I produced 2 videos this week that talk about the market. We come back once a month and we do this. But what I'd like to do is share I'd like to continue this conversation. feel free to give me a call. My direct cell is 941-400-8735. I'll perform an analysis for you. No obligation. We just would like to help. Until next time, I want to thank you for watching, and I look forward to your phone calls. Take care, everyone.